Okay, so what about King Menashe? It's in Sanhedrin, right? The Mishnah Sanhedrin says that some certain kings don't have a share in the world to come. The Gemara discusses that. Maybe there are those who disagree, right? The kings of Menashe, Yeravam, and Achav. Those are the three worst ones mentioned in the Book of Kings. So they're the one to want to say perhaps they had some merit to them. And it brings up the case of Menashe, king of Judah, after the 10 tribes were taken to Gullus. And Ravashi referred to Menashe and the rest of the kings as our friends. He says, tomorrow we're going to learn the story of our friends, Chaverim. And Ravashi was visited by the ghost of King Menashe that night in a dream, who says, oh, you're calling me friends? You're not our equal. You're an ignoramus. You don't even know how to make a proper hamotzi, what part of the bread you're supposed to eat when you have the bread in front of you after you say that blessing, right? You're familiar with this medrash. No, it's not even a medrash. It's just the Ma'aseh Shahaya to happen to Ravashi. Whether or not it was actually Menashe or not is besides the point. Could be the guilty feeling he had in his dream. But the point was that, hold on one second. Question coming in there. It's off. Okay, good. Thank you. So Menashe, King Menashe came to Ravashi in the dream and basically laid the guilt on him for being so flippant, discussing these kings. Turns out Menashe was quite learned, very learned. So Ravashi said, if you're so learned, great King Menashe of the past, why did you worship idols? The Torah, the book of the prophets accused Menashe of much idol worship and also of bloodshed, filling Jerusalem from edge to edge with blood. So Menashe said, yeah, if you'd been there too, you would have picked up your bekasha, and run after me, you would have also done it.
Like something you want to say.
No, but Ravashi understood this. Ravashi realized Menashe was a scholar of high caliber and knew the Torah, and just had one fatal flaw. He perhaps was very big in keeping the commandments, except he also happened to worship idols because of some great Yetzer Hara that Ravashi could not possibly understand, but was very great back then. Now, there are those who interpret the Gemara saying, yes, before this was in the olden days when there was a real Yetzer Hara for idol worship, and somehow the sages fought and destroyed this Yetzer Hara for idol worship, and it's been destroyed since then, early Second Temple times. And as we pointed out, the Rambam doesn't hold to that. There's always been a Yetzer Hara for idol worship, and as a matter of fact, sometime after this Medrash talks about the sages destroying the Yetzer Hara for idol worship. What happened? There are many Jews who became worshippers of the Greek idols. Right? The whole Hanukkah thing happened a few centuries afterwards. So apparently they didn't do such a good job. Right? Ella, it's talking about a much more deeply a deep philosophical idea that the nature of the way the Goyim worshipped idols also changed. That men became a lot less superstitious and pagan, and now became a new stage in Jewish history, in actually world history. Just like now, people have, even Goyim are very far from, let's say, worshiping any god through sacrifice, animal sacrifice, right? That's basically on the outs. So things have been developing. That's also when the sages start encountering Greek philosophy, which was something that they actually had to deal with. In the olden days, rival philosophies were worship sticks and stones or worship imaginary gods in their pantheons. But sophisticated Greeks already were not really idolaters. Plato and Aristotle were not idolaters, right? No, they were not. Plato believed in a creator. Aristotle believed in a creator, I think. That's it. Aristotle, right? The Rambam actually says you can learn a lot from Aristotle. Not everything. He disagrees with ideas of Hashgacha Pratis and other, fine points and creation ex nihilo and the eternity of the universe. These are not gross differences between Jews who believe in a living God who is incomprehensible and the Egyptians who believe in Ra and Amun whatever and the rest of them and Osiris, right? This is a lot more sophisticated and we actually have to deal with this type of thing. That's what it's talking about. Either way, there are those who don't buy this idea that somehow or other Menashe had a strong Yetzer Hara for idol worship, and any king of Second Temple times just didn't have that because the Yetzer Hara had evaporated. Okay? That's not the literal shot of the story. Instead, what they say is Menashe itself at the time, that's what the Gemara says. When Menashe was around, he was extremely tempted by Yetzer Hara because of something that was there. My idea is, I think I begin to understand this with looking at the current leadership. Why does leadership do everything that's wrong? Because, like they say, that which you see from here is not what you see from there. You get something into the position of, prime minister, some other person in this, in this country, There are just certain things they cannot do.
Bribes and threats.
Yeah, it's basically bribes and threats. That's what it is. Bibi's sitting there saying, "You don't understand." You say, if I could be prime minister of Israel, I would summarily remove all of our enemies from the country and, give a good show of force to our enemies beyond the borders. And, all the things that all the good patriotic Jews want to do, basically that the Torah says, or not even the Torah. Let's say what the Russians would do for their own country when they're in charge, and what any other breathing country does, what the Bulgarians do if they could, do what they wanted to do to protect themselves, and what the Singaporeans would do, right?
But there's clearly a personal lack of these three kings.
Yeah.
Because
So
there were many people that didn't fall into that.
Yeah.
And these kings did. So they had.
So here's
Bibi said, "Oh, you're not my."
So why Menashe? So you're asking, Rav Ashi should have told Menashe. The response was, but your dad must have had a huge Yetzer Hara, and he could have been like your father, and your grandson Yoshiyahu beat that Yetzer Hara, and the previous good kings Yotham and David and Asa and Yehoshaphat and your ancestors beat the Yetzer Hara. So you're saying, oh, for me it was really hard, so you don't understand. No, Menashe had it harder than the other kings. You know why? Menashe actually did have it harder. That's what I'm trying to get at. If you were king, you think if you were in charge, you could be prime minister, king, whatever title you give yourself, admiral, okay, commander in chief, dictator for life, right? So let's say you had that position. So you think you'd be yourself. Yeah, maybe that's true. That's why God chose King David. King David had certain exemplary characteristics as a shepherd boy and as a musician, and it was a very into what you and I would call dveikut, right? Or what used to be called Hasidut, not neo-Hasidism, but he used to have this. So God chose him. This is the type of person I want to lead my people. Or Joshua had certain characteristics, hasmada, and loyalty to his Rebbe. So God said, that's what's going to make him the leader of Am Yisrael for now. Good. But when you take people like this, Menashe had a specific issue going on in his day. What was it? We mentioned them before. It started in Achaz's time, it continued through Hezekiah's time, and finally came to an end in his own time, which was the Assyrian problem. Assyrian Empire was basically, they were the bosses. His Yetzer Hara was following after the gods of the east, Assyria and Bavel. It says the Assyrian kings actually came and took him as prisoner to Bavel for a while, where, according to the Medrash, based on the very on him, it says he appealed to every one of these gods until he finally turned back to God and said, okay, last chance, if you are God, please get me out of this terrible situation, right? So too, just like, sorry, before I say so too, the problem that Menashe had was that he was subservient to them. In his world, in the way he had to run his kingdom, he needed to go along with everything the Assyrians did, including their modes of worship. That's what he felt. He was compelled to do so because of the situation, the socio-political situation, the military situation in his country. So too, if, by the way, the prime ministers and everybody on top never have to answer to the people. If we could arrest the prime minister today and bring him in front of us, in front of a court, and say, demand of him, interrogate him, why have you not, let's say, changed the way the IDF is run? Why have you not fired your chiefs of staff and all the other higher ups? I don't know the exact terminology for the echelon up there in the hierarchy, but you understand, why haven't you done anything? Why haven't you done the most basic things that any of us would have done until this point and even after this point? And he would say, you just don't get it because the Americans, they're the ones in control. They're the ones who are controlling me. Perhaps they're Yetzer Hara-ing. They're bribing him / blackmailing him, a combination thereof. But for people who are ideal, let's say, fears of God, they don't look at those things. That doesn't sway them. But for many people, this Yetzer Hara of the potential to make millions and millions of dollars in the future, which is basically all the military people, and this idea that they hold something against them, that they feel that they have no other choice. Remember, they're not religious. They don't believe in God. And even if they do say God things, it's just like, yeah, they go to synagogue on Yom Kippur. They show up at a photo op at the hotel, but they never talk about God. That's not saying they realize to them God doesn't exist. They act it. They show it through their very actions that they don't understand even what God is. So the bosses are in charge. That's the Yetzer Hara. That's what Menashe was saying. So now we have a comment. So the comment of the Bible is, if you were my position, not just if you were my time. Yes, exactly. If you had been in my specific position, okay? Or maybe it was implied because Abai had a position. It says the Ravashi. It was Ravashi, not Abai. I think. Check the Gemara. It's on Kuf Beis. I was looking at it today. Kuf Beis. It's in Chelek. Okay. So I'm pretty sure it's Ravashi later than Abai. Either way, Abai didn't, or Ravashi didn't have the same anything like the position that Menashe had. Abai did not have Ravina, although he was a Jewish leader and head of a yeshiva, a great Rav. He did not have anything close to the position that a king of Judah and Israel had. Okay, he didn't have an army. He didn't have a capital. He didn't have a country to look after. So yeah, it's the first one. If you were in my position, in my time, with the Assyrians and all that, you would have been in that. That's what at least he could claim. So I can't blame people under duress who do this, but I just have to know. Basically, nowadays, Bibi is not going to worship Baal, and he's not Christian, but he is the equivalent of an idolater back then. Back then, following the Assyrians meant, lip service. You do the Assyrian mode of worship when your 20 minutes of the day they're dedicated, and you do whatever the Assyrians say because their gods are on the ascendancy. So today, you don't call it a god, but the American dollar is your god. And what the American regime says is basically what you have to do. So when they're trying to, it's been weeks now, they're drumming up support for this Rafa thing that they want to do, which is necessary. Basically goes to America, and everybody is begging America to do it. They're begging America for the support, right? In America, do we trust? They're begging to Menashe. Menashe was in a situation where he had rightfully claimed. You don't understand the Yetzer Hara back then. You've been in that position, you would have also done it. Why? Assyria is on the ascendancy. You go where you eat where the bread is buttered. What's the expression? I don't know the exact expression. By the way, that's basically what they could claim now. You don't understand. There's a reason why most people who end up on the top here in Israel end up taking a certain policy. It's their avodah zarah today, and it's a major Yetzer Hara to them. They can't resist this urge, whatever it is. They actually claim that we have no choice. You should just know when people end up doing the wrong thing, big people, powerful people, wealthy people, always end up saying, "I had no choice. I couldn't. I had to do it." It's usually, that's the Yetzer Hara, just a really strong Yetzer Hara.